Jane MacArthur. I'm a member of Friends of Tecumseh Forests, which is the group hosting tonight's event. Tonight is the second of 3 speakers events in our speakers series. This represents the beginning of activities or formal activities of this group, which was co-founded a couple of years ago or 3 years ago by Steve and Sonia Colombo in the back, and they recruited me into the fray, and we've been growing ever since. So it's great to be at this point now where we've got activities and events happening. So as I said, this is the second in a series of 3 speakers. Tonight we'll be hearing from Larry Cornelis, and I'll tell you more about him in a moment. But first I'd like to do a first I'm gonna let you know, come and go as you need to the washrooms, which are located down the hall at the very end. So I'll give a land acknowledgement. I want to acknowledge that the land we are on is surrounded by water and was originally inhabited by indigenous peoples who have traveled this area since time immemorial. The territory is within the lands honored by the Wampum Treaties, agreements between the Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, Lenni Lenape, and allied nations to peacefully share and care for the resources around the Great Lakes. And I know that we're all dedicated to continuing to learn more about honoring our Indigenous history and the culture of this region, while remaining committed to moving forward respectfully with all First Nations, Inuit and Métis people in so-called Canada. And with that, I would like to introduce our speaker for tonight, Mr. Larry Cornelis, and I'm going to read about his activities. So he has been active over the years with many naturalist clubs and associations, including Lambton Wildlife Incorporated and the Sydenham Field Naturalists, both of which he has served as president and director. He is a horticulturalist, naturalist, and ecological restoration consultant, vice chair of Ontario Nativescapes, an ecological restoration nonprofit organization which has done thousands of acres of habitat restoration work in southern Ontario, specializing in tall grass prairie restoration. He has been involved in many conservation projects, big and small, and restored a 25-acre wetland meadow woodland complex on the family farm just north of Wallaceburg along the north branch of the Sydenham River. And as a book nerd, I myself am very excited that Larry has brought with him tonight 2 of his books, one which he tells us is hot off the press. They're at the back there. Oh, Song is holding up the newest one. So if you want the books, let Larry know at the end. He said he's happy to sign them as well, and the price stays the same. Stephen inquired whether the price would change with an autograph.
That one's on sale.
And I'll just let folks know, this is being recorded, but it's just the front. And if you missed the first event, it's on the Facebook page. If you're not on the Facebook page, join there, but you can go and look at the prior talk, which was by our co-founder, Steve Colombo. So with that, thank you very much, Larry.
Thank you, Jane. And good evening, everyone. I'm so happy to be here. Tree forest group, wow. Usually I'm speaking to horticultural societies and I'm a little bit like walking on eggshells thinking, oh my God, I'm going to upset all these horticulturalists, right? Because, they got to have their tea roses in their hot sauce or anything. But usually I'm well received by them too. So finding much more so that people know about native plants and that there's something important going on here and we need to know about this and learn about this sort of thing. So that was a bit of an introduction. But I thought, since you've dedicated 3 hours tonight to be with me for my presentation, maybe you should know a little bit more about me. And I thought I'd share a couple of stories about when I was a little boy. And one of them was, I was about 4 years old, and this was on our family farm, which is just where I live now, just outside of Wallaceburg on the North Sydenham. And when I was 4 years old, I swallowed 2 pennies. Kids put things in their mouth, right? Apparently I was more apt to do that than most, because I swallowed a lot of coins back when I was a little boy. But I remember in particular, I swallowed 2 pennies, and I wrote a poem about it, and I think I will read you that poem, if that's okay, right? I've carried this story for 60-some years, right? This is an old story. And it hasn't really sunk into the last 10 or 12 years what it really meant. But anyways, so the title of the poem is Baby Birds. baby birds. I gotta take my glasses off to read. So, baby birds. When I was a little boy, I swallowed 2 pennies. Alarm and fear pulsed through me, a flood rolling down my cheeks. For in my child mind, how would they ever come out? Intuitively, my Mecha said purposely, take him outside, find some bird nests, cradle with baby birds, and hold him up, so he can see the downy young, see a wonder of nature. This will bring him his solace and joy, for this is his therapy, where he finds his duende. This my Mecha knew. A seed of deep nature was born that day in a little boy who swallowed 2 pennies and felt the golden threads of baby birds. I just got chills telling you. The golden threads, the invisibles, you know, those things that touch your heart, right? And so my grandmother, Mecha, that was my grandmother, knew that was my therapy. She knew, like, she told my Uncle Bob, take Larry out, find some baby birds, and by the end of the day, I totally forgot about those pennies. Like, it was, and I won't tell you anything about the rest of the story. Yeah. So then I have another story. Now I'm 6 years old, okay, and I'm starting school. I was fortunate, I didn't have to go to kindergarten because we happened to be moving the year I would have been going to kindergarten, and Mom didn't want to send me to one school and switch me to another school. So I didn't start school until I was 6 in grade 1. And so at the back of the school was a special tree. I'm going to read you another poem, you know, if that's okay. Man, we got 3 hours, so. Page 4. It's a short one. And the title of the poem is Sycamore Speaks, which is the title of this book. So at the back of the schoolyard, there was a sycamore tree. And I was fascinated by it. 6-year-old boy. Maybe one of the only ones in the school, I don't know, but I was fascinated by it. So this poem came to me at 4 a.m. on March the 19th, 2023. I finally put it down in words, the story. So here it is, Sycamore Speaks. You stand so tall with your beautiful white scope. In your golden brown spheres lies future life's hope, an expression of Mother Earth, her soils and waters, her brilliance through you so magically alters. May the cerulean sing from near the sky so high, and a breeze her whisper as she passes you by. You stand so tall, sent a message to young me, that I can also share what life's future hope be. Together we share Mother Earth's sorrows, carry the heartfelt messages of better tomorrows. May the birds and the wind and your sister and brother trees join in the commune of how things may well be. Beauty expressed, standing so tall, Sycamore speaks to us all. Yeah. So, I've been talking about that tree. I still visit that tree regularly in Sarnia. That's not the tree on the cover of the book, but there are pictures of that tree in here, although I don't have titles to go with the pictures. But where is that tree? Anyways, I'll find it later. Yeah, so I believe that those 2 stories kind of explain how this guy became such a nature guy, okay? But then I have to wonder, I have to imagine that if my sister had swallowed 2 pennies, my Mecha would have said, take her out and find baby bird nests. So obviously she felt that was an inherent thing for me, that I had that connection. I think as little children, we all are connected to nature, looking for meaning and feeling and wanting to explore and discover. And so, and I think we need to really work to get our kids outside in nature, because if they don't have that experience as a little child, they're not going to find it when they're 20. It's something that is inborn in them. And I say in the one book, often when I hear like poets or artists or authors talk about a book or their life, it was the family had a farm, or the family had a cottage they went to, or a cabin somewhere, or the family went on camping trips, you know, intense. So those things in your childhood really, really speak to you and set the path for a nature kind of minded person. One more thing about myself, okay? So every year there's a group at the Walpole Island Reservation called the Bikejwanong Eco Keepers. So we call them BEC for short, okay, BEC. So for many, many years I've been inviting them to my place, inviting them to the farm. I've even gone there and we built like bee boxes and things like that at the Heritage Center on Walpole Island. And last year, they always give me some kind of a gift and a little bit of an honorarium donation. And last year they gave me the most special gift. Like it just touched me and blew me away. And what it is this thing here. And this is a medallion. Okay. This is a medallion, a beaded medallion. I'm super, super proud of this beaded medallion. Michelle, can you see what it says?
It says, living like Larry.
It says, living like Larry. Oh my gosh, right? And who knows native plants besides Laura? Yeah? Okay. You look phenomenal.
Yeah, Patricia.
Patricia, oh
Yeah.
yeah. Hi, good to see you. You know what that plant is?
Well, I'm gonna say sunflower.
Close, it's family, but can't come up with it? Okay, it's pretty obvious, I think.
Okay.
Look at the leaves, the long stalks, the flowers
Boy,
up.
I wish I had put my hand up.
Laura?
Prairie dog?
Oh, she didn't have to look at it, I just.
All right, well, there you
So
go.
every year, apparently, I have told them my favorite flower is prairie dock. So they did a beaded thing of prairie dock and put living like Larry on it. And you can even go to a YouTube video where they all explain why they should live like Larry and what they learned from a visit with Larry. So wow, that was really special. Yeah, a few tears going on with that one. It was pretty amazing stuff. So enough about me now. I almost feel like I'm really singing to the choir here, playing to the choir, but you know, once in a while the choir needs a pep rally, right? So maybe we'll give you a little pep rally. And if you want to take pictures of any of those slides, I don't mind, because there's going to be some plant lists on there. Maybe you know this stuff already, but if you don't, it's easy to take my picture than trying to go through Doug Tallamy's 10 books and find out where it is, or something like that. So if you want to take pictures of some of the slides, you can feel free to go ahead. So we're going to focus on the importance of biodiversity and native species, which, you know, like I said, I'm probably singing to the choir here. Playing to the choir. Isn't that just an amazing little mini world, that long-spurred violet just tucked into the crotch of an oak tree with enough moss and enough, you know, silt and soil that's blown in there and decay over the years that it can have its life happily in that little crotch of tree. When I saw that, I just clicking away like crazy with the camera. Yeah, beautiful little world there of its own, right? Yeah. So biodiversity, millions of interactions. So I always find it challenging to convince people that biodiversity is important to prove that. I mean, I could give you all the facts and figures, but yeah, it's kind of hard to prove that in a presentation, right? But the things you should know about biodiversity is that it isn't just about species of plants or animals, it's about ecosystems, species, and genetics. So all of those perspectives, the biodiversity in all of those perspectives is important to the whole system, okay? It's critical to planetary health, absolutely critical. We can't wave a magic wand, change all of these forests to European trees and think everything's gonna be okay. It's gonna fall apart. Like, it is absolutely important that the biodiversity of native plants and native animals be where they belong. We can't move them around the world, right? Which provides resiliency within those elements. And by resiliency, it's kind of like if an ecosystem or a species has a problem, there's a calamity of some sort, there's an invasive species challenging them. Well, if you've got huge biodiversity, the system will handle that for a while and it'll work itself out. Whereas if you had low biodiversity, the system would start falling apart. once you start losing things, right? Would start to have a lot of big issues. So those are kind of the main ecosystem, species, and diversity things. Then on the other side, this is kind of the more the anthropocentric things that, you know, everything's about us. So you have to convince people, it's good for us, right? So things like provides food that we eat. And the biodiversity about the food isn't just the variety of food, it's about what grows the variety of food. So the soil biome, the pollinators, other insects, birds, all those things play a role in supporting the food system, okay? It maintains a healthy environment, provides ecosystem services, once again, anthropocentric view, important to spirituality and culture, sense of place, knowing your place, right? Not too many people know that, right? It's really important to have that sense of place and how that influences your spirituality and your culture within that place or that area. It's a safety net, kind of an insurance policy to maintain a healthy biosphere. It's about interconnectedness, interdependence, holistic, harmony and balance, relationship, and I like these words, the story of oneness. Okay? The story of oneness. We're now living in a story of separation. Okay? We need to get back to the story of one. We are part of the earth. We are part of everything. We're made of the soil, the air, the fire, everything. Like, it's a story of oneness. And all of the species of plants and animals are actually our relatives. Because we share so much DNA, even with a tree. We share like 60% of our DNA, let alone, a monkey or some other mammal, which is like high 90%, right? The story of oneness, not the story of separation, which is a hierarchy story of us on the top of the pyramid, standing up there going, are we the only intelligence in the universe? When there's so much intelligence below us that created the actual possibility for us to exist, right? Yeah. The story of oneness. Native species is the foundation of healthy ecosystem. I've been saying that for years. That sentence could be the whole presentation. That's it. Native species are the foundation of healthy ecosystems, biodiverse healthy ecosystems. Whether it's a white oak on the left, or a bison, and I was going to wear my bison shirt, I wore my cuckoo shirt. Bison's my favorite mammal. Those are our keystone species with a big influence on the ecosystem that they live in. And I assume everybody knows what I mean by a keystone species. Species that plays an exceptional role in maintaining habitat or ecosystem. Yeah, so bison. Oaks, we'll talk about oaks a little bit more. So important, right? The oaks. Yeah. Native indigenous plants are extremely important to us in wildlife. I just love getting that picture of those baby birds in my presentations. And you're not going to be able to guess what those are. Anybody want to try? No. They're eastern kingbird babies. Eastern kingbird babies. Yeah. And of course the monarchs on some goldenrod. Those connections between birds and insects and plants are so important. And it has to be native plants, right? It has to be native plants. What are the issues with alien species? What are those issues? Everybody knows what that is, garlic mustard, right? Everybody knows what that is. And look how dominant it is there in that picture. And that's what these alien species, the invasive ones, that's what they do. I mean, we do actually have alien species arrive on our shores and in our airports every week, all year long, but only a few of them become really big problems, like Phragmites or garlic mustard or zebra mussels or quagga mussels or stuff like that. Emerald ash borer, things like that. But the ones that do become a problem usually become a huge problem, as we all know. So what are the issues with alien species? Well, let's have a look at this wetland here. This is just north of Wallaceburg. It's at Reed's Conservation Area, which I have a little something to do with saving. Reed's Conservation Area. It's 175 acres. And in the middle of Reed's, It's a woodland. Well, there's two small fields, but it's mostly woods. And in the middle, there's an old abandoned river channel. So it's an interior wetland in a forest. Very primordial, very ancient feeling when you see a wetland in the middle of a forest, right? So it's an old riverbed that got probably a few big storm events, made the river take a different route, and it abandoned that channel, and it's just water all through the middle of the bush, which is kind of neat when you're coming through like oak, hickory, maple forest, and all of a sudden here's this band of wetland, and then back into the oak hickories and stuff like that. So black walnuts, black cherries, things like that. So just imagine the biodiversity we're looking at there. Amphibians, aquatic insects, the ducks, the water birds, the mammals that come for drinks, the different kind of plant species in there. Like this is a world of, and pretty much everything you're looking at in this picture is native, okay? It's a very, very pristine channel in the middle. The ends, not so much. You'll see a little bit of that in a second. So this is a very pristine, hundreds of species of plants, thousands of species of insects, dozens of species of birds, amphibians, all that kind of stuff. So very, very biodiverse, healthy habitat. So what's happening in most of our wetlands right now? They're getting overtaken by phragmites, okay? So that channel runs about 500 meters through that forest. And there's only about 100 meters in the middle left that the Phragmites hasn't taken over. Only 100 meters left in the middle. So like, are we gonna lose that whole thing? I don't know. And you can just imagine the biodiversity in here with basically one species of plant and hardly any species that make use of that plant. And a turtle can't even get through it, right? I have found turtles that died years ago, suspended between Phragmites stems in wetlands before, because they get stuck in there, and once they're stuck, they just perish in there. So, and our club, St. Field Naturalist, Nature CK now, has been involved in a lot of Phragmites removal projects. You can win a battle, but you're not going to win the war. Okay? You're setting it back, but you're back in 5 to 10 years, looking at the same thing. Situation. In that case, we were trying to cut the Phragmites off underwater. If you can cut it off underwater, it'll drown. Okay? But if the source of it was on land, it'll just send out in runners and it'll be back in. So weird. So very, very low biodiversity, right? So the question is, are aliens bad? And maybe bad's a bad word to use. People do bad things happen. Are aliens bad? I guess that's the word we want to use because of what the problems they're creating and the issues. So are aliens bad? But I'm going to throw you a curveball on that topic. Okay? So I drew you a baseball. I'm going to throw you a curveball later on in the presentation. So are aliens bad? Now, if these guys showed up, you'd be freaking saying, yeah, aliens are bad. And we would all be like scared to death and freaking out and that sort of thing. But if you're an ash tree, same thing, right? You'd be scared to death, freaking out. This bug comes from China and kills all of you, your relatives and family. And even looks like an alien. It's like he's got a helmet on from space, That's the emerald ash borer. And Windsor, Detroit was the epicenter of how it spread out. There are a lot of ash trees, well, lots, compared to the tens of millions we've lost. A lot's kind of maybe the wrong word, but there are surviving mature ash trees in Essex County and in Michigan. Hundreds, not millions like we had. So to me, there is hope that someday the ash will be able to return from the genetics of those particular ones that apparently, for some reason, the emerald ash borer didn't like its chemical makeup or something, or its smell or something, and they left them alone. So there's always that possibility, even with a bug, that there would be some trees that have the genetics to resist and kill off those insects. So that's kind of a bad alien, right? We sure didn't need the emerald ash borer showing up. Native versus non-native aliens. Are introduced alien plants bad? Who can tell me what those two plants are?
Norway maple?
And?
Oh.
Oh. Who can tell me what those two plants are?
They're definitely plants.
We need a dendrology class? Is that what we need? So you don't know the difference between a sugar maple and a Norway maple in bloom? No? So sugar maples are droopy flowers, always droopy. Norways are a cyme, an open round cluster, kind of upright or out. Big difference. You can spot it from hundreds of yards away. Sugar Norway, the sugar just has that smooth kind of draped looking look to it, whereas the other one's kind of punches of color everywhere. So that sugar maple and Norway maple. I asked this at the Lower Thames Valley Conservation Authority AGM, and nobody could answer the question either, so don't feel bad. Native plant species are the foundation of healthy ecosystems, said that before. Biodiversity plays the key role in that sort of thing too. So let's consider pollinators in reference to native plants and biodiversity. Let's start with pollinators. Anybody know what kind of flower that is? I don't think it grows in the Windsor area, actually. It's called wingstem. Yeah, wingstem. Herbazenia. So given a choice, native pollinators will choose native plants 90% of the time. That comes from Doug Talmy. Who's read Doug Talmy's books? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, okay. Yeah, so that comes, most of this comes from Doug and his students and his different books. I've seen 3 of Doug's presentations. In fact, I have co-presented with him twice. Outside of Port Huron and at MSU. Hey Shane! Good to see you.
How are you?
Good, good. Yeah, so I've had breakfasts, lunch, and dinners, and whole evenings with Doug Talamy on 2 different occasions. So. And his advice was, keep it up, Larry, keep it up. We need to get the word out. And that's what my second book's about, keeping it up, right? These are specialized relationships formed over millennia, even longer, eons, right? These are special relationships. We have 13 bee species, for example, that only get the pollen from helianthus, sunflowers. They don't eat the pollen from anything else, sunflowers. And in some cases, a specific species of helianthus, especially in the Midwest, I think. Indiana, Illinois, Iowa, out there. And there are 3 species of bees that specialize on a spring ephemeral, like spring beauty or trout lily. So just think about its life cycle. How long do spring beauties bloom? 3-4 weeks in the spring? That bee has to come out of hibernation, the queens, get to the pollen, lay some eggs, those have to hatch, they have to go to that pollen in 3 or 4 weeks before those plants go dormant, because they're spring ephemerals, they go dormant, and then the rest of the year they're just back to being dormant, waiting until next year to do it all over again. Their whole life is about like 3 or 4 weeks in the year. There's also one Andrena bee that specializes in asters, so that's a fall one that does that, a fall one. So there's another one that for about a month or so, the population builds up, lay their eggs, the larvae pupate, next spring, out come the queens, that sort of thing, right? So that's a very special relationships with native plants, is my point. And here's a bumblebee on a tall sunflower. This is spring beauty that I just mentioned, that's the Andrena bee. Andrena claytonii is the name of the bee. Yeah, and here's just a little collage of different native wildflowers and different pollinators on the wildflowers. And does everybody know how to tell the difference between a bee and a fly? No? No? So what you just have to look for in the difference of a bee and a fly is that flies, this is a fly, do not have antennae. The little bumpy knobs, they do not have antennae. See how long the antenna is on that bumblebee? Because there are a lot of bees, or flies, that mimic bees. And there's actually bees that mimic flies, but their antennas give them away. Yeah. So just a little ID tip. Yeah. This being a hummingbird moth, right? Clear-winged hummingbird moth. American copper, red spotted purple, bumblebee, oh, that's a carpenter bee over there. Don't ever let a carpenter bee sting you by accident. That's a powerful one. Yeah, I had that happen once. Not that bees tend to sting you often, but sometimes you just make a mistake, and one gets, flies around, gets under your shirt or something, and then you're in big trouble, right? Because he thinks you're trouble and you're trying to kill him. Yeah. So don't let a carpenter bee sting you. So when we talk about pollinators, the presentations are almost always about flowers, wildflowers, right? Sunflowers, asters, goldenrods, even the woodland flowers, the geraniums in the spring beauties. But trees and shrubs, woody plants, play a very, very important role to pollinators too. And it's kind of something we don't consider when we're creating a pollinator garden, right? You wouldn't think of, plant a black cherry and a basswood to support pollinators. Right? That's not where you go to first. You go to the wildflowers. So woody plants are surprisingly important pollinators. Bees even collect pollen from oak trees. You remember me saying that before, Shane? Yeah? So don't answer the question then. So bees collect pollen from oak trees, but they are not pollinators of oak trees. Fourth year biology. Nobody's answered that question yet. Why is that? Why is it bees are collecting all this pollen from oak trees, but they're not pollinators of oak trees? Steve, is that a postulation there? No? How are oak trees pollinated? Wind. What is the sexuality of the flowers on an oak tree? Male, female on the same tree. Monoecious. Male, female on the same tree. If you're pollinating by wind, it's a kind of hit and miss thing. If it happens to be the period that you're going to create all this pollen is there, and it isn't too windy, you might not be successful in pollinating the female flowers. So you create so much pollen, copious amounts of pollen, that ups the chance that it's going to be received by a female flower. Now the female flower, being wind pollinated, doesn't create nectar, because why would it? That takes a lot of energy. I don't care about bees and flies and other kind of pollinators. So bees are eating the pollen, but they have no reason to go to the female flower on the oak tree. So that's why bees use the pollen, but are not pollinators of oak trees. Yeah. And of course, there are many trees with showy flowers, pollen-rich showy flowers, complete flowers with both male and female parts within the flower. Tulip tree is one everybody thinks of right away. If I say, what's a big showy tree flower? Or magnolia, which tulip tree is in the magnolia family, but it's not in the genus Magnolia, being a liriodendron. Yeah, that's the first one. Cherries. If you've been near a big black cherry in June that's blooming, you'll hear the buzz from like 200 feet away. Like, it's just unbelievable how many bees and flies and other insects go to the flowering cherry trees. Even though those aren't big, they're just tiny flowers. But when you got 100 on a cluster, it's pretty showy, right? So just visit a black cherry or basswood and you'll learn what I'm talking about. Talk about Doug Tallamy a little bit more. He's come up with this concept, some of you will know this, the homegrown national park. And he's basically saying, if we could get half the Americans to do half of their backyards, we could create more habitat than all the national parks in the United States combined, including the big ones in Alaska. It'd be tens of millions and millions of acres that are available for us to do habitat work on. And I just asked the class a couple of weeks ago, why aren't we doing this? What's holding us back? And we had some discussion about that. Oh, by the way, when I say the class, myself and Clint Jacobs we teach a course at University of Windsor about relationships with nature and using native plants to restore community. And we go visit Laura's garden. Last 2 years we've gone to visit Laura's garden, taken the class. Shane was there. Yeah, Shane was there. Yeah, so this is Doug's dream now. Because apparently he was having the same conversation I kind of started out with, where I was like, come on, Doug, you're just preaching to the choir, right? You need to come up with something. So him and a couple other people got together, and this is what they came up with. Let's start Homegrown National Park. It's what I did in Sarnia under a program called Return to the Landscape for about 10 years. So I wish Doug a lot of good luck because it's tough going. As Laura would explain to you, it's tough going to convince people. We had a few girls in the class say they would absolutely not ever do that. Yeah. They want lawn corner to corner. So most of the insects that provide energy up the food chain are caterpillars. Have you thought about that? So I'm going to shift to caterpillars. Away from pollinators, go to caterpillars. Most of the food chain, things that eat caterpillars, the list is really long. So they're kind of the basis of the food chain, especially in the forest, but also in prairies and wetlands and things like that too. And everybody knows about the connection between them, the monarch caterpillar and the milkweed family, right? Genus Asclepias. So there's one on a butterfly milkweed, and here's one on a common milkweed over here, monarch caterpillars. They're important to the food web, especially to songbirds, okay? So we're gonna talk about song. So now we're talking about how important this is to pollinators. We're gonna talk about how important this is to caterpillars, and then how important that is to songbirds, right? Songbirds, anybody know what that is? Probably not, I had to look it up. It's an orange humped oak worm. So it needs an oak tree, right? We'll talk about the importance of oak trees a little bit further in the presentation. Here's a couple of eastern tiger swallowtail caterpillars. Tulip tree out in my front yard at the farm. And every day, it's the first time I've ever seen this happen, every day they were side by side together. Usually they're individual, but those two must have been special buddies because every day they were side by side. And you know how you find them? Do you know how to find that there are eastern tiger swallowtail caterpillars in your tulip tree? Nobody? No? Well, every morning you get up, go to your tulip tree, walk around it, and look for leaves on the ground. And you will pick up a leaf that has been partially eaten, and then the stalk has been bit off, and the leaf is dropped. So at night, they eat off the leaf. When they leave, they turn around, bite the stalk, drop the leaf, so there's no evidence in the tree that they're there, right? Yeah, and then they make this little webby, they actually cup a leaf a little bit, make this web, tight web in there, and that they can hang on to in a windy day. Whereas those shiny leaves might be kind of hard to hang on to on a windy day, right? So these two guys are actually sitting on a web. That's kind of hard to tell. Do you get a sense that they're a little bit suspended? Right? There's a little bit of a web there that they're sitting on. So that's how I find eastern tiger swallowtail caterpillars. I go look on the ground and I'm like, oh, we got some in this tree, we got some in that tree, and then I go looking for them. That's another story, especially when they're this big. Because they started doing this pretty early, biting the leaves. Yeah, and they're a cool caterpillar, right? That's a cool caterpillar. This is bird food, is the point. This is bird food. Yeah. Now the other thing is plants don't want to be eaten. You don't want to be eaten. Nobody wants to be eaten. No animal, nothing wants to be eaten. But plants seem to be willing to share a bit, right? I mean, let's face it. They evolved hundreds of millions of years before humans. Even like Homo erectus or any of the ancient humanoids, like flowering trees 350 million years ago, coniferous cone-bearing trees 450, 500 million years ago. So they've been setting the stage for us to develop and become plants. We have that to thank plants for. They're willing to share, but they don't like it if you take too much, okay? We always take too much in this Western culture. Indigenous cultures never took too much. If you took too much, you were a Wendigo, and you got banished from your community. You take what you need, and that's all you take, what's essential. And that's how nature and humans co-evolved until the last maybe 1,000 years. But since the Industrial Revolution, the last 200 or 300 years, right? So 90% of the caterpillars are host plant specialists. That's because plants don't want to be eaten, so they create all these different chemicals to deter things from eating them. But and then a few insects figure out, oh, I can eat this plant, and innovate and co-evolve with that plant, and so now you have plants that support a few insects, but not all the insects. So that's why most of our caterpillars are specialists, 90% specialists. Because the trees have made sure that it wasn't going to be any different, right? It takes eons of evolution for that to develop. Our native insects have not had time scale required to adopt to alien plants. So as an example, Norway maples Norway maples have been in eastern North America for over 300 years. And there's only a handful of insects that have figured out that they can eat from that. The rest, leave it alone. It just doesn't smell like food, it's not palatable, they can't live on it, you know? So we'll get into that a little bit further too. And so, because there's no coevolution with the aliens, right? So the caterpillars, once again, this is actually two presentations I put together. Yeah, so that's why some are light blue and some are dark blue images. Again, 90% of the host plant specialists, host plant must be native in the majority of cases. Native oak supports 450 species of caterpillars. A native oak, 450. So you just plant an oak in your yard and you just have 450 species of insects, mostly moths. That's not to say you're gonna have 450 species in your tree, but there's 450 species in your area that can use that tree. You probably end up with 20 maybe, something like that from what Doug Talmy said, and the counts that they've done. English oak, 4 species. 450, 4. Okay, like, because they evolved in different continents. Even though it's a quercus, an oak, they still don't recognize it as food. So you take a banded hair streak, put it on an English oak, and the caterpillar will die. So, and alien plants create novel ecosystems which have no evolutionary links to native caterpillar species. So here's the list of trees. You might want to take this picture. Doug and his students have done the study, and these studies have also occurred in Europe and other places in the world with all the same kind of results. The local species support big numbers of insects, caterpillars, even pollinators, and the non-natives do not. So oaks are 450, willows are 427, prunes 418, birch 408, poplars, cottonwoods, poplars 400, maple 281, pine 247, hickory 215. And the 215 that are in hickories, most of them will be different than the 450 on the oak. Okay? They're all specialized, remember, 90% are specialists. So, what do we got here? 1,000, 2,000, almost 3,000 species of insects you help if you have those 8 trees in your yard. Yeah. Wow. That's pretty good. That's actually a black oak. It looks like a pin oak, I know, but it's actually a black oak. Oak is a keystone species. That's what a keystone species is, has a disproportionate influence on an ecosystem, supporting the biodiversity based on its abundance. Although oaks are pretty abundant in that particular case. As an example, bison, 500 years ago there was 30 or 40 million bison, but they covered hundreds of millions of square miles, right? So yeah, it's an influence relative to their abundance. So 450 species, numerous bird species use the acorns, numerous bird species. It's amazing that I mean, acorns are pretty big, that a blue jay will make use, you know, or a woodpecker, because you know the woodpeckers are gonna bang them apart with their chiseled bills, that sort of thing. But yeah, a lot of birds make use. Wild turkeys swallow them whole, you know, just swallow them whole, things like that. So numerous bird species, all kinds of mammals, including humans. Indigenous peoples in North America, that was their staple. They made flour out of white oaks, the whole white oak group. The red oak group's got more tannins in it. You can make flour out of it, but you gotta purge that out of there 2 or 3 times, boiling, soaking, that sort of thing, and then you make flour out of it. But the white oaks, you might only do that once, and you're making flour. And so, like, you know, like this country was covered with oak forests up to the prairies, eastern North America, and the west coast, and that was a staple food for a lot of people. And then we kind of cut them down and grew wheat, so we had a staple food for a lot of people. You know, so like they were like, what are they doing? You know, what? These crazy guys. And a monoculture. Monocultures are no good for anything, right? Whereas you had a diversity of forest with all those different species of oaks in, that was biodiversity. Yeah. And then of course numerous other insect species. Gull-forming insects. You know what a gull is? Those little round balls you see on leaves sometimes on twigs. Some of them be almost as big as a big marble or a golf ball. But some of them are only like a millimeter. They're just like little bumps on a leaf. There are over 200 species of gull-forming insects that make use of oaks. So you got 450 caterpillars, over 200 species of gulf forming insects, 650, 700 species right there, just because you planted one oak. But better yet, plant 3, right? Because we're learning more and more about trees communicating. And one by itself might be a little lonely, so give them some friends, okay? Yeah, here's non-native tree species. Northern maple 5 acres, 4 ornamental pear, 2 burning bush, 0 ginkgo, 0 marigold, as examples, 0, 0, 0s, 2s, 4s, 5s. Right? We can't change our landscape to that. We can't use those in restoration work. Everybody says, oh, ginkgo is the greatest tree ever. It survived nuclear bomb in Japan. It's been around for 200 million years. You know, yeah, it's a good street tree, good park tree, but it doesn't offer any ecological values. You know? And that's what we always have to be thinking about. Integrating ecological function into our landscape. Not just trees, but ecological function. Right? So it has to be native plants, native trees. This is diminished biodiversity. Here's the best shrubs. Best shrubs you can plant. These are from Doug Ptolemy's list. Willow, sandcherry, blueberry, alder, raspberry, hazelnut, dogwood, growth. There's 2,000 species of lepidoptera right there. Right? Yeah. Raspberry being a really good one. Willow being the best, because willow was tops in the tree section too. Willow's really, really good. Yeah. Wildflowers. Nobody thinks about wildflowers as supporting caterpillars. But caterpillars eat grasses and wildflowers too. And of course, number 1, goldenrod. Right? You think we can get people to buy goldenrods? That's a tough one.
My sister and brother-in-law live on Manitoulin Island.
Yeah?
People behind them are from Ohio. My brother-in-law took a walk down one day and he said, what'd you do with all the goldenrod?
Goldenrod?
And they go, oh, you mean the ragweed? And he
Oh,
said,
they
"No."
call it ragweed?
Yeah, no. I said, his wife was allergic, and they didn't bother to look up what it was. They just saw a yellow flower and just eradicated
My
like.
wife's allergic, yeah. I just had this kind of similar conversation with somebody else. I was someplace and it was at Western University, and one of the people there said, "I mean, this isn't ragweed."
Yeah.
And I'm like, "There's no ragweed here. What are you pointing at? All these yellow flowers." I'm like, "What? No, that's not ragweed. That's goldenrod." And if you go to Europe or Japan, I mean, they have cultivars of goldenrods. Selected cultivars, they love them. And here it's hard to get anybody to buy them, right? A goldenrod. And there's well-behaved goldenrods. You know what I mean by that? With a Codex root system. Not like Canada or a tall or where they send out this meter-long runner and all of a sudden it's coming up over there. And then next year, another meter-long runner and in 5 years your whole garden's taken over by Canada goldenrod. No, plant stiff, plant Riddell, plant gray, plant early. There's a whole bunch of them, showy, that just hairy, and woodland, you know, blue stem,
Zigzag.
zigzag, a little bit rhizomatous, but not like Canada. Well-behaved goldenrods, and that's what the Europeans are using to develop cultivars of showy goldenrods. Yeah. And so you go to a garden center in Belgium or France and they're selling goldenrods. You go to Japan and they're selling native flowers, and then you can't see any in the garden center here in Ontario or any place in our country, right? So there's your list. Goldenrod, asters are the top 2. Strawberries really high. Sunflower, boneset, violet, willow herb, and wild geraniums. And this translate, you know, when I'm talking about caterpillars in particular and insects in general, there's so many animals that eat caterpillars and insects. It isn't just birds, all kinds of animals. We could. In fact, there's places in the world where they do. There's places where they eat insects, right? Yeah, and so all of those things need insects, and you know, we're facing the insect apocalypse.
And raptors.
And raptors, yeah. Yeah, hawks and owls will eat, will eat big insects too. One time I found a whole bunch of owl pellets, great horned owl pellets, that were the exoskeleton of crayfish. Totally crayfish shells, like, yeah, so they'll eat anything that crawls, apparently, they're gonna come down and grab it, especially, you know, a nice big crayfish, yeah. One of those terrestrial crayfish, yeah. So, native trees support songbirds through the food chain. There's a pair of redstarts. That is a red-winged blackbird nest. Here's a common yellowthroat with a caterpillar. Now they're a little bit fussy about the caterpillars, but most of our caterpillars are these smooth green or brown skin things, really soft, and they don't wait till they're 3 inches long. The timing of returning with migration, the development of the leaves in the trees, the insects' eggs or laying eggs hatching, that's all timed together so that the birds are collecting little caterpillars to feed their babies, right? Collecting little caterpillars like that. They're not sticking grasshoppers in there.
Yes, one of the earliest in the spring, of course, are the weevils that are in the flowers of the Brazilian cottonwood poplar, because that's the food that the returning migration
Yeah.
flocks
Yeah.
go straight to.
Yeah, they love those cottonwoods. In fact, I led a walk on Saturday at Coldstream, Park Poplar Hill, going to London, and there was a big flock of cedar waxwings in a cottonwood, and they were busy, so they were eating something up there. Yeah, so they like these soft skinned, not big hairy caterpillars. Only one bird, songbird, will eat hairy caterpillars, because the hair gets stuck in their throat or in their stomach, doesn't digest. It's not good to feed a baby bird, or songbirds in general, hairy caterpillars. So that's a defense mechanism of those caterpillars. Although I have personally watched a black-capped chickadee with like a woolly bear type of caterpillar ripping the skin off of it and eating out of the inside. Yeah, so some of them have figured that out a bit. But there's one bird species, well, two bird species locally that can eat hairy caterpillars, and that's this bird. Cuckoo. Yeah. Cuckoos swallow hairy caterpillars. The hairs line their stomach liner, and when it gets really thick with hairs, it dislodges and they cough it up like a pellet. Yeah, cuckoos have figured that out. So that's a cool innovation, right? That's a common yellow-throat warbler. Here's a black-capped chickadee. And this is through Doug Tallamy's work again, where he and his graduate students put a camera on a chickadee nest box, ran it all day long, 17 days from hatching till the fledging, and then they went back and wrote down everything that went in that box to feed those baby birds, and it was mostly, almost 100% caterpillars. Guess how many? How many caterpillars? You know, like a full-grown chickadee is like a cotton ball, like 0.4 of an ounce, like a full-grown one. These little babies, you know, they don't take much. How many caterpillars do you think it took to raise 5 baby chickadees to fledge out of the nest? Everybody wants to guess? You already know, yeah. You know, don't say the answer. You remember the answer, Shane?
Think so.
You think so?
10,000. Guess I should have.
9,250. Every time they counted, it was between like 8,500 and 9,500 kind of a thing. Every time. And then they also, the students, during the day, followed the adult chickadees around to see where they were going to get those caterpillars, and they never once went in a Norway maple or a Siberian elm or a ginkgo or anything like that, because they knew that would be a waste of time, and if you've got to collect 9,000 caterpillars over 17 days, you don't have time to waste, so they didn't go there. Isn't that something? And they did find in that neighborhood, and the chickadees don't go far, because you can't fly 2 miles and think you're going to feed 9,000 caterpillars if you got 2-mile trips, right? This is all in a small neighborhood. They found a box in a neighborhood, and all the baby chickadees were dead, and they were covered with sunflower seeds. So mom and dad couldn't find enough caterpillars and thought, we eat sunflower seeds, maybe we can get the babies to eat the sunflower seeds, and they put those sharp, hard things in the baby's mouth and they spit them right out because they want a nice, soft little caterpillar, right? And they ended up dying. Box full of dead babies and sunflower seeds all around in the box. So that was interesting. And there's my kingbirds again. Here's another study that they did. Hedgerows of native versus non-native plants. Hedgerows in the country, you know, the farmland. We don't have a lot of those left in Essex or Kent, hedgerows, but that used to be like a big thing when I was a little boy. That was a big thing when my uncle took me around to find those baby birds, right? Hedgerows. And so Dr. Talmy and students measured the caterpillar biomass in hedgerows of predominantly native species and predominantly non-native species. 4 hedgerows of each. And they said it was almost impossible to find 4 dominated native hedgerows. There was non-native species hedgerows everywhere, but to find 4, but they finally did. They figured it was high enough native component to it, and this is what they tallied, okay? 68% fewer caterpillar species, 91% fewer caterpillars, and 96% less biomass. 96% less bird food. So if we don't have the native plants, we don't have the caterpillars, we can't grow baby birds, which means eventually we don't have songbirds. That's the scenario that works out. This is the quote from Doug. By every measure, the caterpillar community was seriously diminished when introduced non-native plants replaced native plants. Doug Talon. I have a friend, his name is Alan Bishop. This is a hedgerow here. Alan's 83, his neighbor's 81. They love their hedgerow. It's 100 feet wide. There were like 100-year-old trees in this 100-foot hedge. It's like his forest to him. And he just loves it. And him and his neighbor would never touch it. And I'm sure it's like the only one for a long way around here to find a 100-foot wide hedgerow. And he has no way of protecting that. You know, he has no way of protecting that.
What species does he have growing there?
Oh, bur oaks, basswoods, sugar maples, there were ash.
What about honey locust?
No, there's no honey locust in there. No.
Too bad.
Yeah. Too bad, yeah. I love honey locusts too.
Maybe a good hedgerow.
Yeah, yeah. I should show you a picture. We got 11 monster ones at our farm. Our farm is named the Honey Locust Homestead. That's the name of our farm. My daughter's business anyway. Yeah, so there's an amazing hedgerow. That's a thing of the past. These guys in their 80s, I don't know how much longer that's gonna last. I'm sure that'll be gone. 20 years from now, that'll be gone, right? Yeah. So mature birds will eat berries, right? Well, they don't feed their babies berries, but they will eat berries. So is there a difference between native berries and non-native berries? Well, as it turns out, there's a huge difference. Look at those numbers, right? Native berries, 25 to 50% fat. Alien berries, 1 to 2.6. So have you ever been to a bird banding station in the fall? They get a little bird in the hand, and they cut them in mist nets, right? They blow the feathers on the belly, and they look for this golden yellow patch, and it's fat. And they measure the size of it, and get a sense of the thickness of it, and that is the energy that little bird needs to get to Mexico or Brazil, wherever they're going. That's a fat source. So if you're flying along, you know, you're heading south, and you're like, oh, there's a lot of berries, and if most of the berries you're eating have 1% fat, 2% fat, you're not making it. You need 25 to 50% fat content to keep that maintained and keep that built up. So they fill up, but they're not fueling up. They don't know that. They can't measure the fat content in something. It's a nice berry, and so they'll eat it. So that's really, even in the berries, there's a problem, right? Even within the berries of trees and shrubs, that's native elderberry there. Yeah, and buckthorn actually makes birds sick. They throw up and they get diarrhea. Buckthorn actually makes our songbirds sick. Here's a few of our native berries. Sumac, 100 species would use sumac, sassafras, spicebush, and this is, I think, a downy arrowwood. So 30% introduction of alien species starts to fail our native insects and birds and so forth, the whole ecosystem. Just a 30% introduction. So here's your curveball, okay? There's no such thing as a bad plant. You can't blame the plants. They're not bad plants. Where they're supposed to be, they're great plants, right? They're needed there. There's no such thing as a bad plant. There's only another relationship, how to balance dominant culture. It's us. You know, global warming isn't a problem. Melting of the polar caps isn't a problem. Extreme weather events isn't the problem. Famine isn't the problem. The problem is us, our culture. I believe that thoroughly, strongly. The problem is us. We are in a story of separation to create wealth and power. This is actually a movie that came out last year. I can't remember the name of it now. It's a school bus full of kids from around the world, about a dozen of them, and they went all over the different countries in the world to talk to leaders, business leaders, community leaders, even like prime ministers, about saving the forests. Kind of a cool movie. Oh, and I forget the name they gave that guy. Had a cool name. I forget the name. You see what he's doing? He's just scooping up, taking, right? Chunks of forest in his arms, stuff flying all over the place. Kind of cool movie. So carrying capacity, the need to integrate as much ecological function as possible into restoration efforts. So here's a case where we're doing some pits and mounds over on the right, and here's a case where we plant tallgrass prairie as a nurse crop. So instead of letting the weeds, the European weeds, the Asian weeds, dominate an abandoned farm field, which is what's going to happen, plant it with tallgrass prairie, and then you have sort of a functioning ecosystem right away. And prairies put in deep roots, and that's carbon going into the soil. And when the forest eventually that you plant, this is at St. Anne River Nature Reserve, Ontario Nature owns this property, it's all going to be forest someday. That prairie is building soil, microbiology, healthy soil for that forest to really boost and get it going, right? And we put in pits and mounds to hold water on the landscape. So if you make a pit, size is bigger than this table, even bigger than that, and the dirt from the pit goes there, now you got a mound and you got a pit. When it rains, this pit fills with water and it leaches into the landscape slowly. Whereas if the whole field is as flat as this table, you throw a bucket of water on there, it just runs off, it's gone, and it dries off at the same rate. You get a 2-inch rain on a flat field, in 3 days it's dry. You get a 2-inch rain with a field of pit and mounds. There's frogs, salamanders, turkeys are going to get drinks, deer are going to get drinks. That water stays in there for weeks. I've actually seen pits and mounds hold water an entire growing season, where baby toads and frogs got to go through the whole life cycle and come out of those pits and mounds. And that keeps the soil moist, right? That there's always water on it, rather than totally dry like a flat farm field would be, which is what this was before we started. It was a soybean field. How do you do all this? Well, you need more plants, more species on the landscape, and the caveat is they have to be native plants. More plants, even in your home backyard. You want up your biodiversity? Laura's got a list of way over 500 species of things that have been in her front yard. More plants of more species. That's all you gotta do. Put in more plants, more species. But they have to be native. Okay? They have to be native. And even 30% non-native starts to fail things. Remember, that's what Doug said? Even 30%. That's a restoration field of tallgrass prairie near Wallsburg, right there. Giant swallowtail and an ironweed. Who's got ironweed? Good, yeah. Man, pollinators love it. Songbirds love the seeds in the fall and the winter. Got a lot of pictures of like white-crowned sparrows and that, taking the seeds off of ironweed. Great plant for pollinators. Oh, there's the white-crowned sparrow. There's the white-crowned sparrow on ironweed right beside it there. Biodiversity. All of this is about community gardens. The community that a garden is too. Community means more than just me and my neighbors. It's everything. The environment. And one of the biggest gifts you can give a child is to grow a garden, a nature garden, so they can look into a nest of baby birds and feel the golden threads, the invisibles, and be touched by that for the rest of their lives, right? You will feel one with nature in your own backyard if you do this at home. It's about relationship, community, benefits are huge, physical, mental well-being. You have a deep nature experience and realize your connectedness, your oneness with the living world. How do we do this? How do we better our relationship with nature? Ecology, earth-based worldview, combine indigenous worldview with Western science and technology, develop an intimate feeling for a relationship with plants and nature now, work with understanding that all elements and beings, all life is linked together, engage in our role as caretakers. I like the word caretakers. I don't care for the word stewardship. Steward. That's usually a job, a steward. It's what the wealthy in Europe had stewards to maintain their beautiful gardens and all those kinds of things. You know, we have stewards and stewardesses on airplanes. So I prefer the word caregiver over stewardship or steward. We need a cultural philosophy. Here's a quote, an indigenous quote: "Man does not weave the web of life, he's merely a strand of it. What he does to the web, he does to himself." There's a dragon, green, blue diamond dragonfly. Chief Seattle, the earth does not belong to us, belong to the earth. Indigenous peoples have a deep reverence and respect for nature and see little separation between themselves and all that is nature. That is all about relationship. John Muir: "When you try to pick out anything by itself, you find a hitch to everything else in the universe. The golden threads, the invisibles," right? In every walk in nature, one finds much more than one seeks. That's my favorite quote, because it's so true. You know, go spend a day in nature, in the woods, or in a flowering tallgrass prairie, and you're going to receive a lot more than you thought you were looking for. Because it's just a world of wonder, and it touches your heart and soul and your spirit, right? Those are the golden threads. That's about relationship. It's all about relationships and community. Nature as a community to which we belong. So this is part of my community course slides through that are coming in here. This is my friend Roberta. We're on a tallgrass prairie on Walpole Island. You can see the elation in that woman's presence there, right? And when I showed her that picture, she was like stunned, and she said, "Larry, that is the most beautiful picture of myself I have ever seen." And I said, "Well, how could it not be, Roberta? Look where you were," right? She was just glowing, knowing that she was standing. This is old growth prairie on Walpole Island, never been disturbed. Okay? Burned many, many times over the years to maintain it as a prairie, never been disturbed, sacred ground, and we got to go visit it, and you can see Roberta was feeling it, right? She just couldn't believe the opportunity that she had to go visit that. And this is my granddaughter, Bella. Should be 3 on Monday. She loves to hug trees, and I did not put her up to it. I have pictures of her with her arms around trees, kissing them. At the farm, in our yard. I'll be doing something, turn around, and there she is hugging a tree. Get the phone out as fast as I can, click, 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 before it's done, right? Yeah, she really likes trees. So I had to take her to my special tree, my sycamore. This isn't the one at the schoolyard, this is one in Wallsburg. We saved a property in Wallsburg titled Wallsburg Sycamore Woods. Yeah, we're deep thinkers when it comes to names. Wallsburg Sycamore Woods. There's 25 or 6 mature sycamores in there in about 11 acres. That's a really high density of sycamores. And so the title of my one book is Sycamore Speaks, and there's a whole chapter about how we came about protecting that property, and then there's a whole chapter in about describing the property. It's pretty pristine. There are old growth trees in there, like 200-year-old trees in there plus, with balding bark, super canopies. I just went for a walk in Clear Creek Forest. Who's been to Clear Creek Forest? Yeah. I didn't see anything that came close to what's in that 10 acres. I know of some trees because I was involved in saving Clear Creek Forest, but the trail that you go on there, you don't get to see anything like in that 10 acres, 11 acres of Wallsburg Sycamore Woods. There's a shoe mart in there. I don't have time to show the picture. I'm going on too long, but yeah, it's a special place. That's one of my special trees, and if you read that book, that's the tree I'm talking about in the book, where I commune with nature and I hear the tongue and language of trees and great horned owls and red-tailed hawks and nuthatches and other tree species, oaks and things. So it's a very revealing chapter on that sort of thing. So get in touch with nature, find your relationship, go native to place. Thank you, that's the end. I'm honored to be here and give your presentation. So,
I don't know if we want to make some space
8
for a few
o'clock.
questions.
Yeah, are there any questions? I didn't get to 3 hours, but if you come to the farm, I'll give you a 3-hour tour. Okay? Yeah, question?
I just had a question. You said the tallgrass prairie that you had the pits in this, and what plants are you putting? Like what seeds are you using for tallgrass?
It's about a 24 seed mix. Big blue stem, Indian grass, some little blue stem. But we don't like to use little blue stem unless it's on pretty sandy soil. Switchgrass, then we have tall sunflower, wild bergamot, sweet oxeye, Smooth beer tongue, penstemon, the list goes on, the pale purple coneflower, there's about 24 species mixed. Yeah. Which, compared to going to an actual natural prairie, is pretty minimal, but it's better than a wheel full of lamb's quarters, pigweed, and green foxtail grass, right? Which it would be for years before those trees shade that out. And putting in the prairie, no pigweed, no lamb's quarters, no foxtail grass. But it's one of the best prairie we've ever planted on that property. And there are trees coming up. And I've always been a bit of a proponent that when you plant little trees, it's okay to have tall plants around them because it makes them reach for the light. Instead of branching down there, they can't be bothered to branch down there, they just keep going for that terminal growth, right? And they get tall quicker. Yet, that's not the thinking behind a lot of ecological restoration people today. They want to spray Roundup over the little trees before they leaf out, and they mow between the rows. And all you're doing is mowing European plants over and over again, and then you go away after 3 or 5 years, and they're still there. There's hardly any ecological function, and the little trees haven't gotten very big because they've been branching out a lot. So that's my perspective is a little different than other people's on how to go about ecological restoration, planting trees. And obviously, it can't be planting 1, 2, 5 species of trees. When you do pits and mounds, you don't go in there and plant. You let Mother Nature do it. So that's really works where the situation is that the field is surrounded by forest. Okay? If you went in the middle of 20,000 acres and took 100 acres and put in pits and mounds, well, how are the acorns and the walnuts and the seeds going to get there, right? But if it's already surrounded by forest, that'll just close that in. I've seen, oh my gosh, like in 15 years, you're walking under a canopy. Walking under a canopy in 15 years when you do that process. They grow so fast and so tall, it's pretty amazing. Any other questions?
Are you gonna share that shimmered oak that you were talking about?
Can I show you the shoe Mario?
Okay.
I can show you on my phone.
Oh, okay, sorry, I thought you had it as an add-on there.
Let me see if I can find it.
How often do you take Nature's CK people to Sycamore Woods? Do you do that on an annual basis?
Twice a year usually, once for sure, but usually spring and fall. Yeah, usually
So
spring.
if you're a member of Nature's CK, you'll
Yeah.
find out when he's doing that particular walk, it's well worth the time. And you get to see him glow when he's standing next to his sycamore friend.
Yeah, next to my sycamore friend, yeah. This is my big tree file. Where are you, girl? Oh, there's my daughter with it.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, like the picture isn't, it's not the best picture. The one on my phone's a lot better. But at 4 feet, it's 6 feet in diameter. And then the bowl, the trunk, goes for like 50 feet.
Wow.
And 4.5 feet, 4 feet for like 50 feet. Like it's a beauty. In fact, if you look in Jerry Waldron's book, he lists the largest shoe mart somewhere here in Essex, and this is bigger.
Is it?
This is bigger. I got no way of putting, I just took it, I'll just show you this. Any other questions? Any other questions?
Who's doing your seed mixes?
Who's doing our seed mixes? You mean for those
Where
prairie?
you get them from?
Oh, Ontario Nativescapes, which started out as the Rural Lambton Stewardship, back when Ontario Nature, M&R had stewardship councils, where there was a person, a staff member from M&R, that went out into a community, county-wise, and looked for people to create a committee and try to do on-the-ground restoration work, and it was hugely successful. I won't get into politics. Until somebody got into office and just said, oh, we don't want that anymore, and got rid of the best thing that M&R ever did.
I think Kurt Vonnegut might have summed it up. He once said, we could have saved the planet, but we were too cheap.
Yeah, that's a good one. Yeah, any other questions?
How would we get to see some of those trees and areas?
Boy, that's a good question. Well, you go on websites for all the different nature clubs. We just had a contest in Chatham, Kent. The best tree in Chatham, Kent. The best tree. Now that's a little skewed, because you might think, there's my friend Melissa beside that tree.
Oh,
That's a better picture, isn't it?
that's the same tree?
That's the same tree, yeah.
Well,
I
you
don't know
don't
why,
believe
I don't know why the difference, that was taken almost 20 years ago.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Now everybody.
Yeah.
That is
Here,
fantastic.
Pass that around. I mean, you've seen the tree, actually, I know. Yeah, pass that around. What was the question again? What am I answering? I'm sorry, what was I answering?
How do we get to see some
Oh.
of those areas that you're talking about?
Go to the different organizations' websites and look for tours and things, like Nature CK, Essex County Field Naturalist, Lambton Wildlife, Natural Pathways apparently. Yeah, there's a number of groups. I'm sure you guys will be doing that in the next few years, right?
Yeah, it'd be great actually too, if you're on the Facebook, or maybe post some of those things or other.
Yeah. How many have been to, it's called Devon Woods? Like, go there, like, come on, like almost every oak species we have there.
What about we call the woods right here in Tecumseh?
I don't know, what about it? I've never been there.
I know.
Yeah, so I need to see that too.
Well, you know, Erica didn't even know that there's a whole row of honey locust trees there, really old ones.
Wow.
And off trail.
Wild natural
but
ones?
they're there,
Wild natural ones?
yeah,
Yeah, wow.
with grapevines like this arching
yeah.
over through
What's the name of this woods?
McCullough.
Mc-
It's a conservation area.
McAuliffe.
McCullough.
Yeah, yeah, it's about 5 minutes from here.
I better come for a tour. Yeah, better come for a tour.
There's a tree about as big around as that in there.
Did you see my phone picture? Did you see that picture on the phone? Did you miss
Yeah.
it? Yeah?
Steve, I think you had a question, right?
So we lost American chestnut about 100 years ago. And they're now reintroducing or thinking about reintroducing a hybrid. So it's half native
Yeah,
and half alien.
yeah.
What's your thought about that?
I could read you another poem. So, and this is what I've said to sycamore, because sycamore has this problem. You know what I mean by sycamore has this problem? So American sycamore, genetically, is probably gonna go extinct if it isn't going extinct now. Because everywhere, ubiquitously, everywhere, municipalities, even like townships and counties, businesses have been planting London plane trees, everywhere. In fact, it is the most planted tree in the world, London plane, which is half American sycamore and half Oriental sycamore. And they met in England for all of London plane. One, it's in my book, one out of every 2 trees you see in London, England is a London plane. There are over 500 million of them in Philadelphia. They are everywhere, and they are wind pollinated. So here we have our big majestic sycamores, and what's the wind gonna bring to them? London plane pollen, and contaminate their flowers, and so the seeds going forward are not gonna be true American genetics anymore. They're gonna be a mixture. And I say, is it enough that a part of you survives? Is that the circle of life? Is that inevitable in my poem? You know, and that's the story with the chestnut. Is it enough that part of the American chestnut survives in this relationship developed so it has resistance to that disease? I don't know the answer to that. I don't like the answer to that, because we have to do that, right? Yeah.
I can add something on that topic, because there's an organization called the Canadian Chestnut Council,
Yeah.
which is out to restore the species.
Yeah.
Anybody can join. I joined myself, and I went to the AGM, which was last week.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
near Brantford. And the good news is, they do have 100% native chestnuts that they're starting to plant out. So when they started the research more than 20 years ago, they didn't know how it was gonna
Right.
work out.
Right.
So they had 2 streams. They had hybrids, Asian hybrids, and they had pure pure
American.
Ontario Canadian
Yeah.
chestnut. There's different programs going on in the US too, that's more complicated, but here in Ontario, they do have 100% Canadian. They're not 100% resistant, but with each generation, there's more resistance. And they have plants now that they're very confident that they can plant an acre of it, and that forest will survive. Not every tree will survive, but they've even done, people at the University of Guelph have done statistical predictions, let's say, that enough of those trees will survive that it will be a permanent stand of American chestnut. So that's pretty big news. And they're actually looking for partners and sites now in Ontario where it's not to plant here and there. They want 1 to 2 acres where they can plant, I forget what the number is, I think a minimum of 500 trees that will establish a viable unit of American chestnut.
They would like the right soil type and that sort of thing too. I believe in the States, the Chestnut Council there, they keep breeding back, and so they're more at like 80% American and only 20% introduced, and so they keep working at trying to get as close to zero as possible, but I don't think they can go to zero unless that works out there. The same thing with the elm. So University of Guelph has been, does anybody know about a big elm? Who knows about a big elm somewhere? Oh, come on, guys. Yeah, there's still some big elms out there. So Henry Koch, University of Guelph, the late and famous Henry Koch, they went out and found all those big elms in Ontario, collected from them scones, grew them from seed, grafted them, sprayed them all with Dutch elm disease. Half of them died, well the other half didn't. Propagate from them, do it again, spray them all with Dutch elm disease, and they've worked their way down so that, to the fact that our club just received 12 supposedly Dutch elm resistant Native American white elms to plant in our community. Yeah, so that was started like 30 years ago, and that's how long it took doing that repetition of poisoning them with the fungus and trying to kill them, and the survivors using those to keep working their way through it. So that's interesting, right? Yeah.
That's great.
Oh, can you imagine having elms back? Like as street trees? It'd be fantastic. Yeah.
Well, I get the sense we could go on.
Yeah.
All of it. Larry, thank you so much. Your talk was inspiring, it was informative, there was so much wisdom. I had such visceral reactions so many times to things that you said and how you said it. So thank you from all of us for making your way here to do this and sharing your knowledge and inspiration. This is a token of appreciation. I want to thank all of you for coming tonight and remind you that in 2 weeks we will have Laura Foy, who's here with us tonight, with
I
her
have to come
talk
back.
on native species
Yeah.
and naturalization. So that's November 12th at 7 o'clock in this same room. Want to remind folks again that Larry has brought 2 of his books. They're at the back. We also have some information from the group and general information about trees in the urban forest, so feel free to take from the table. And if you haven't taken a treat, feel free to do that as well. Is there anything I'm missing? I don't think so, but thank you again, Larry, and safe travels
Bye.